The moment I pulled out that unmarked envelope from the pile of mail, a chill ran down my spine. There was no return address, just my name scrawled in an unfamiliar handwriting. My instincts told me to ignore it, to toss it aside like any other piece of junk mail, but something compelled me to slip a finger under the flap and tear it open. "Your husband is lying to you." Those 5 words hit me like a freight train. My heart pounded as I unfolded the letter with shaking hands. More accusations leapt off the page. Details about Dexter's supposed infidelity, claims about secret meetings and hotel rendezvous. "Wake up, Renata. The truth is closer than you think." I wanted to believe this was all some cruel prank. But then my eyes landed on the phone, tucked into the envelope, a blurry image of Dexter embracing another woman. My mind whirled as I studied every pixel, desperately looking for an explanation, something to disprove what I was seeing. "Oh my God, what is this?" Dexter's voice made me jump. I spun around, the letter crinkling in my tightened grip. He had just walked through the front door after another late night at his tech startup. His eyes widened when he saw what was in my hands. "It's nothing, just some stupid joke mail," I lied, my voice trembling. He reached for the letter, but I pulled it away protectively. "Let me see." "I said it's nothing," I snapped. A dozen emotions battled within me: shock, disbelief, anger, but mostly a nagging fear that there may be some truth behind these horrific accusations. Dexter's brow furrowed with concern. "Renata, you know I would never cheat on you. After everything we've been through together, how could you even think that?" My mind rewound to the struggles we'd endured over the years, the miscarriages, the financial hardships, the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, questioning if we'd ever catch a break. Through it all, Dexter had been my rock, my shelter against the cruel world. "You're right," I whispered, forcing a nod. I'm overreacting." He pulled me into a reassuring embrace, his familiar warmth providing a momentary blanket of comfort. But I couldn't shake the feeling that things had somehow shifted between us. As I hugged him back, something felt off. That night, long after Dexter had fallen asleep, I stared at the crinkled letter and grainy photo on my nightstand. My husband, my loving, loyal husband whom I'd trusted without question, looked like a complete stranger in that damning image. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Over the next few weeks, I became a master of deception. I watched Dexter's every move, studiously cataloging any suspicious behavior while putting on an Oscar-worthy act that everything was normal. And there was plenty that seemed off. The long hours at his startup began stretching into the late evenings and weekends. He started placing his phone face down whenever I entered the room, quickly minimizing whatever was on the screen. And then there were the random phone calls he'd take in hushed tones, retreating to another room for privacy. "Everything okay?" I'd ask when he returned, playing dumb. "Yeah, just work stuff," he'd mutter dismissively. On the nights he did make it home for dinner, Dexter seemed distracted, his mind clearly elsewhere. I'd watch him from across the table, studying the man I used to know like the back of my hand, now a complete enigma to me. One night, after another of his extended Saturdays at the office, enough was enough. As Dexter slipped out the front door yet again, I grabbed my coat and followed a safe distance behind. I tailed him through downtown, watching as he met up with a slim brunette outside a trendy bar. She greeted him with a tight hug and a kiss on the lips. My heart shattered into a million pieces. So it was true. The letter, the rumors, all of it. Dexter, my husband of 8 years, the one man I thought I could trust without doubt, was lying to me. And not just with his words, but with his body too. I wanted to confront them both right then and there, to rush up and unleash the unbridled fury and anguish consuming me from the inside out. But I didn't. I watched, seething in silence, as Dexter and his mistress slipped inside the bar hand in hand. Something inside me had snapped. The veil of blissful ignorance had been brutally torn away. My faith, my love, my life with Dexter, all built on lies. When he finally skulked home in the early morning hours, I was waiting. My face a stoic mask, the letter clutched in my hand. "Where were you?" I asked, point blank. Dexter looked caught off guard, like a kid with his hand trapped in the cookie jar. "I told you I had to work late at." "Don't lie to me." I hurled the crumpled letter at his feet. "I know about the woman. I saw you with her." A smirk crept across his lips, one I didn't recognize, like he had been waiting for this very moment. So you finally figured it out, about damn time. My palm connected with his cheek before I could stop it. But Dexter didn't even flinch, that same smug look plastered across his face. Who is she? I demanded through gritted teeth. How long has this been going on? Does it really matter? He gave a casual shrug. You know why people cheat, Renata? Because they've given up. On their partner, on the relationship, on themselves. His cruel words sliced me to the core. The man I loved was gone, replaced by this vile, unrecognizable monster. You're right, I said, struggling to maintain my composure. I did give up. On you. Turning on my heel, I stormed off to the guest bedroom and slammed the door behind me. The hurt and anger was like a raging inferno inside me now. But I wouldn't let it consume me. Not yet. I would harness that fire, let it fuel my determination, my hatred. And then, once I had the truth, the whole truth, I would take everything away from Dexter Wade. He thought he had given up on me. Well, now the gloves were off, and he was about to see how that mistake would cost him everything. You're being ridiculous, Dexter scoffed, throwing his hands up dismissively. This is all just a misunderstanding. I glared at him, clutching the damning letter in my trembling hands. A misunderstanding? You were caught red-handed with another woman. I can explain. Explain what? I snapped. How you've been lying to me for God knows how long, how you betrayed my trust in the most unforgivable way. Dexter opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. No, I don't want to hear any more of your pathetic excuses. His expression hardened into that infuriatingly smug look I had come to loathe. In that moment, he was a total stranger to me, worlds apart from the caring, devoted husband I thought I had married. You're overreacting, he said coldly. Women always do with these things. I recoiled like I'd been slapped. What did you just say to me? Dexter simply shrugged, seemingly relishing my shock and outrage. It was like he was baiting me, poking the bear just to get a reaction. Well, two could play at that game. If he wanted to match wits and see who could stoop lower, I would oblige him. Mustering all my strength, I finally regained my voice. You're right, you deserve a chance to explain yourself. I forced a sickly sweet smile, starting with why you've been deleting all your messages with this woman. Dexter visibly tensed up at my implication of having proof. Good, let him squirm for once. You've been going through my phone? His cheeks flushed red with anger. I nodded innocently. Among other things. Holding up a hand, I started ticking off examples. Having your car tracked, logging into your email, checking your credit card statements. His jaw clenched and those telltale veins bulged in his neck, the dead giveaway that he was enraged. Still, Dexter tried his best to appear calm and in control. You've completely lost it, do you know that? This obsessive jealousy, it's unhealthy. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Jealousy? That's just the latest in your sad litany of excuses, isn't it? My voice dripped with venom as I took a step closer, glaring right into his traitorous eyes. The truth is, I know everything, Dexter. I have evidence of your affair with Marla Jennings. All your emails, text messages, credit card statements for your dirty little hotel hookups. I paused to let that bombshell sink in before delivering the killing blow. Hell, I even made copies of the disgusting selfies you two would send each other. The blood drained from Dexter's face as the truth of my words hit him. Gone was his arrogance, his feigned superiority. He shrank back, finally realizing he was naked and exposed. How? Was all he could choke out. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? I gave a harsh, humorless laugh. That I wouldn't fight for the life you ripped apart? That familiar vein in his neck throbbed furiously now. I could practically see the gears turning, his mind scrambling for an escape hatch, any excuse, any lie that might spare him from the reckoning he deserved. But it was too damn late. You made your bed, Dexter, I growled, feeling a small sense of victory at holding all the cards for once. No more lies, no more deceptions. It's time to face the consequences. I turned and stormed out of the room before he could utter another word of protest. Let him sit and stew in his guilt and shame for once. From here on out, I made the rules. I would dictate every calculated move, and Dexter would soon realize that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. The words burned like acid as they left my mouth. Marla Jennings? You've been sleeping with Marla? My so-called friend visibly recoiled, her face drained of all color. I knew I had her cornered. The evidence was irrefutable. Renata, I don't know what to say. Marla's voice trembled as tears welled up in her eyes. A flicker of pity flashed through me before being promptly extinguished by my burning rage. Don't bother. I shoved a manila envelope into her hands, printouts of emails, texts, and other proof of her torrid affair with my husband. The truth is all right here, in breathtaking detail. The lies, the deception, the hotel receipts. My lip curled with disgust. Oh, and my personal favorite, those X-rated selfies you two would send each other. Real classy stuff. Shame and mortification washed over Marla's face as she feebly thumbed through the incriminating evidence. She opened and closed her mouth wordlessly, any excuse or justification catching in her throat. I could have taken some satisfaction in her discomfort and humiliation. But in that moment, I only felt a slicing betrayal, not just from Dexter, but from someone I considered practically a sister. We shared everything, from joys and heartbreaks to hopes and dreams for the future. And yet she had zero qualms about backstabbing me in the most unforgivable way. So much for loyalty. So much for our friendship meaning anything. How could you do this to me? I demanded through clenched teeth, fighting back hot tears of hurt and fury. After everything we've been through together, everything I confided in you about my struggles with Dexter. Marla swallowed hard, her expression an uncomfortable blend of shame and defiance. I never meant to hurt you, Renata. You have to believe me. Bullshit. The harshness of my own voice startled me. That's exactly what you intended to do, sneaking around behind my back, spreading your legs for my husband. It's not like that, she shot back, a sudden fire in her eyes. I love Dexter. He loves me. We made a real connection, something you couldn't understand. I recoiled, feeling like I'd been physically struck. A real connection? You're delusional. Marla shook her head adamantly. Dexter wanted to leave you. He told me all about your failing marriage and how miserable he was. He pursued me from the start. Of course he did. It was all becoming disgustingly clear now. Dexter's modus operandi of lies, deception, and avoidance of taking any responsibility. Marla was just another smoking gun in his trail of shattered trust and broken vows. Don't kid yourself, I spat. My husband is a coward and a pathological liar. It's all he knows. He manipulated you just as easily as he manipulated me. Tears streamed down Marla's face, smearing her makeup into an ugly mess. A sick part of me relished the sight. You're wrong, she croaked out weakly. We have something real. He loves me. The desperate, hollow look in her eyes confirmed my suspicions. She was nothing more than Dexter's latest victim, another conquest willingly ensnared by his false promises and smooth-talking mind games. Marla was pathetic. But Dexter, he was the true monster I needed to stop. Without another word, I pivoted and stormed away, my mind already strategizing the most fitting retribution. An eye for an eye, that's what he would get. And once this was all over, Dexter would finally understand the bone-deguish and humiliation he put me through. I would return that pain tenfold. The fury blazed within me, consuming any mercy or sympathy I once might have felt. Dexter had demolished everything, my love, my trust, and the future we had planned together. Now it was my turn to watch everything he cared about go up in glorious, well-deserved flames. I paced back and forth in my living room, hands trembling as I clutched the damning evidence of Dexter and Marla's affair. My mind was racing, formulating a plan to make them pay for their unforgivable betrayal. Exposing their sordid secrets wouldn't be enough. I wanted complete and utter devastation, to obliterate everything they'd worked towards, to leave them as empty and hollow as I felt. A delicious vengeance, retribution for the agonizing pain they'd put me through. With each calculated step, the scheme took shape. I'd strike fast and without mercy. Let the shockwave ripple through our entire social circle and professional networks. By the time I was done, Dexter and Marla's lives would be in smoking ruins. My phone buzzed, jarring me from my revenge-addled thoughts. A text from Dexter. We need to talk. I smirked, picturing the desperation consuming him now that I finally held all the cards. Let him sweat it out a little longer. Several hours passed before I finally responded with two simple words. Your office. When I arrived at Dexter's sleek tech startup, his assistant gave me an uneasy look but didn't protest as I breezed past her desk and into his corner office. He was hunched over his laptop, pinching the bridge of his nose like a man grappling with the weight of the world. "This is a professional environment," I announced coolly, making sure my voice carried. "So let's keep things professional, shall we?" Dexter flinched, clearly not expecting my detached bravado. When our eyes met, the pathetic resignation on his face almost made me smirk. Almost. "How could you do this to me?" His words were laced with quiet anguish. "To our marriage?" I arched an eyebrow incredulously. "Are you seriously asking me that question, after everything you've done?" "I never meant to hurt you," Dexter pleaded, attempting one of his charm offensives. But the act held no sway over me, not anymore. Things just got out of hand with Marla. Before I knew it, I was in too deep. Too deep. I fought back a scathing laugh at his paper-thin excuses. "You don't get to play the victim here, not after you systematically destroyed my ability to trust." My voice dripped with disdain. "Secrets, lies, cheating. That's all you know how to do, isn't it?" Pain flashed across his features, my verbal blows clearly landing. "Good. I made a mistake," he conceded hoarsely. "A horrible, unforgivable mistake. But you have to believe I never stopped loving you, Renata. You're everything to me." He reached across the desk in a pleading gesture, but I instinctively recoiled from his grasp like it was a venomous snake. "Save it," I hissed. "Your silver tongue stopped working on me a long time ago." This time, Dexter didn't try to mask the hurt etched across his face. He swallowed hard, seeming to accept that there was no coming back from this, no smooth talking his way out of the devastation he'd caused. And I was just getting started. "You want to know how this is going to play out?" I asked, keeping my tone, untarnished detachment. "First, I'm going to take this evidence of your affair with Marla." I tossed the manila envelope onto his desk with a dull thud. "And I'm going to share it with everyone. Our friends, your investors, current and prospective clients, the whole damn world if I have to." "And then?" he croaked out, eyes swimming with apprehensive dread. A slow, sinister smile crept across my lips. "Then you can kiss everything goodbye. Your company, your reputation, whatever sad delusions of happiness you had with Marla. All of it. You won't have a goddamn thing left to your name when I'm finished with you." Silence hung heavy over the room as Dexter absorbed the crushing weight of my vowed promise. His mouth opened and closed wordlessly like a fish gasping for air. I held his gaze unflinchingly, drinking in every agonizing moment as the first droplets of my vengeance began raining down upon him. "See you around," I muttered coolly, turning on my heel to leave. Or maybe not. The party was in full swing by the time I arrived, fashionably late. Laughter and the clink of champagne glasses filled the air as Dexter's friends and business associates mingled around the modern event space. I scanned the crowd until my eyes found my soon-to-be ex-husband holding court near the bar with his latest fling, Marla, draped all over him. They made for a perfectly punchable portrait of arrogance and entitlement, blissfully unaware of the reckoning that was coming. Taking a fortifying breath, I smoothed out the front of my red dress, chosen specifically for the occasion. Like crimson battle armor, striking and unignorable. This was my moment, after all. I crossed the sleek concrete floor with purposeful strides, briefly catching the eye of Dexter's assistant, Kelly. Her expression glazed over with trepidation, no doubt sensing the storm brewing behind my eyes. "Smart girl." "Renata, you made it!" A fake, toothy grin stretched across Dexter's face as he lifted his glass towards me. "We were starting to wonder if you'd show. And miss your big night?" I matched his artificial cheeriness, turning it back on him with sickening sweetness. "Wouldn't dream of it, dear." Marla's owlish gaze bounced back and forth between us like a spectator at a tennis match. I could practically see the worry gnawing away at her. The two of us making niceties through gritted teeth, the tension crackling like lightning about to strike. A small crowd had begun to gather around us, their interest clearly piqued by Dexter and I's impromptu reunion. Let them ogle and gossip like the privileged vultures they were. Their morbid curiosity was about to be satisfied. "Well," I proclaimed loudly, forcing an exaggerated smile as I scanned the rapt faces surrounding us, "I actually have a bit of an announcement to make." Dexter's bravado faltered as our eyes met again. My cold stare sent an unmistakable message that whatever came next would not be good. At least, not for him or his lover. Reaching into my clutch, I retrieved the sealed manila envelope that had been burning a hole through my purse lining for weeks. I held it aloft, letting everyone take in the suspicious package. You see, my dearest husband here has been keeping a few secrets. I paused to allow the confused murmurs to swell briefly before continuing. Intimate secrets he's been sharing with a very close friend. Half the room seemed oblivious while the other tensed, sensing the impending bombshell about to detonate in their midst. Dexter turned toward me with panic smeared across his features, any plea for mercy dying on his lips. No mercy would be shown this night. With a series of loud rips, I tore open the envelope and began pulling out its contents. Page after page of incriminating evidence of Dexter's torrid affair with Marla. Explicit text exchanges, scandalous photos, travel records, and receipts from their tawdry trysts. You see, while I've been home picking out baby names, Dexter's been picking out baby makers, I declared in a booming voice. And wouldn't you know, he chose the brightest bulb from our inner circle to stick it to. I threw the final few photos into the air, letting them flutter down like confetti across the speechless crowd and their horrified faces. Marla let out a strangled sob, frantically grasping at Dexter, as if he could somehow shield her from the nuclear fallout she'd been complicit in creating. "You lying son of a bitch!" someone shouted in disbelief. The catcalls and mutters of disgust rolled through the stunned audience like a tidal wave. I stood there, back straight and chin high, reveling in the carnage as Dexter's world burned all around him. Finally, after weeks of meticulous planning, my revenge was complete. Spinning on my heel, I strode away from the wreckage, casting one last look over my shoulder at Dexter. The hollowed, haunted expression carving his features nearly made me crack a smile. I had warned him about the consequences of betraying me. Now he got to witness the pulverizing aftermath up close. Let him choke on the ashes of everything he'd so arrogantly squandered. His business, his status, his future with that two-faced snake Marla. It was all gone, vanished in a single glorious gasper. As for me, I was free, untethered from years of torment and anguish. Finally, at long last, the shackles of Dexter Walsh's lies had been undone. It was time to let the healing begin. The fallout was swift and merciless, exactly as I'd envisioned. Within days, the collapse of Dexter's carefully cultivated life was splattered across every gossip rag and tech blog in Seattle. The disgraced CEO, felled by his own tawdry affair and web of deceit that came unspooled so publicly. Good. Let them run those scandalous pictures and seedy text exchanges on a continuous loop for all I cared. The more reputational damage inflicted on Dexter, the better. Across town, the lawyers were circling like sharks, each enabler and business associate looking to distance themselves from the implosion of Dexter's startup. Major investors pulled funding. Longtime partners cut ties. In a matter of days, everything he'd spent years building disintegrated into a smoldering ruin of hubris and betrayal. I'd orchestrated the perfect demolition, the ultimate retribution against the man who had so callously tormented me with lies and infidelity for far too long. With each ticking update of Dexter's downward spiral, a grim smile crept across my lips. This was the justice I'd hungered for from that first vicious sting of betrayal. To see him stripped bare of every ill-gotten gain, every shred of arrogance and self-importance dismantled along with his sordid, depraved legacy. The real gut punch, though, came from the most unlikely of sources. Dexter's mistress turned accomplice in his own destruction. Marla had been uncharacteristically silent in the days following my explosive reveal, no doubt licking her wounds and grappling with the seismic embarrassment of her home-wrecking ways being thrust into the harsh spotlight. Once the initial shock faded, however, her near-feral self-preservation instincts kicked in. I was alerted of her publicity tour by a string of frantic texts from Dexter, each one more pathetic than the last. "She's lying. Everything Marla's saying, it's all lies. You have to stop her, Renata. She's out for blood." "I never wanted to hurt you. You were my world." I barely made it through his sniveling pleas before hurling my phone against the wall, cackling at his feeble, desperate attempts at salvaging what minuscule scraps of dignity he had left. Flipping on the TV, I was greeted by Marla's smug face on the screen, that familiar, self-satisfied sneer sketched across her features. The had certainly grown a pair now that the opportunity for vengeance had arisen. Dexter made a lot of promises to me about leaving his wife and starting a new life together, she proclaimed to the salivating reporter. He laid it on thick, talking about soulmates and true loves conquering all that garbage. I rolled my eyes at the cloying sentiment, knowing full well the slimy game Dexter played. He'd mastered the art of telling women exactly what they wanted to hear in order to get what he desired. But it was all a ploy, you see, Marla continued. Standard operating procedure for Dexter Walsh. The lies, the manipulation, the complete lack of conscience when it came to using people to get what he wanted. On the screen, she held up a sheaf of papers and photos that looked disturbingly similar to the package I'd used to expose their affair. I have proof here of Dexter's countless indiscretions, records of the hotels, the emails, all the sordid details of how he betrayed his wife and took advantage of me. He's a selfish, dishonest coward who only cares about himself. The searing diatribe set my soul ablaze, every word piercing through me like a vindicating dagger's caress. At last, someone else could see and acknowledge Dexter for the venomous serpent he truly was. I leaned back and soaked in every lashing second of it. On the TV, Marla's face was contorted into a mask of white-hot fury, utterly unrestrained in her quest to obliterate whatever feeble existence Dexter may have reassembled. He'd played with fire one too many times, scorching both of us in ways that could never be forgiven nor forgotten. Now the burner was getting burned. A lifetime of transgressions finally catching up in one cataclysmic inferno of consequences. And I had a front-row seat to witness every glorious, well-deserved flame. You've turned into something unrecognizable. Dexter's words hung heavy in the air, more indictment than observation. His eyes bored into me with a searing intensity, as if he could somehow will me into feeling an ounce of remorse or shame. I simply shrugged, impervious to his desperate pleas for absolution. Maybe I'm just done playing the meek, subservient wife you thought you could walk all over. His face contorted with that all-too-familiar mix of rage and indignation. Is that what you think? That I looked down on you, treated you like some second-class citizen? Rolling my eyes, I shot back without missing a beat. Your actions spoke louder than any of your lies or hollow apologies ever could, Dexter. You don't get to be the victim here, not after everything you put me through. He opened his mouth to protest again, but I silenced him with a raised hand. Save it. I'm done caring about your justifications or what delusions you've cooked up to absolve yourself of guilt. My voice was a razor's edge, daring him to challenge me further. The papers have been signed, the given. It's over. Dexter's shoulders slumped in defeat. In that moment, he looked every bit the haunted, broken husk of a man his actions had reduced him to. Good. Let him marinate in the consequences he so richly deserved. I turned on my heel, leaving him to stew in the wreckage of his ruined life. Outside, the crisp spring air filled my lungs, reinvigorating and purifying with each deep breath. After months of anguish and despair, the shackles had finally been cast off. Dexter no longer had any hold over me or the power to inflict any more damage. His humiliating downfall and loss of reputation were the ultimate form of recompense, a scorching case of karma come full circle. In the coming days and weeks, I focused on rebuilding, renovating the house to depict my fresh start, cleansing every last remnant of Dexter's stain from the home we'd once shared. Our twisted marriage had been corrosive, near fatal to my sense of self-worth and identity. But now, alone and unshackled by his toxic influence, I was reclaiming it all. My friends and family rallied around me, offering sympathies and support, though I waved them off with polite yet firm dismissals. I didn't need their pity. What I'd done was an act of self-preservation, a protective right to purge myself of Dexter's miasmic presence in my life once and for all. In time, the calls from reporters and paparazzi grew less frequent as my role in Dexter's spectacular downfall became old news, eclipsed by fresh scandals and salacious stories. My name faded from the spotlight just as I preferred it, quietly, anonymously receding into the background as an unassuming graphic designer once again. Dexter, on the other hand, would never have that privilege, not after the way his personal depravities had been laid startlingly bare before the world. Disgraced, destitute, and most unforgivably alone. Deserted by his fair-weather friends and opportunistic leeches the moment his status and wealth evaporated. Only Marla remained, and even her continued involvement was undoubtedly self-serving, a final act of vengeance before disappearing into oblivion as well. 6 months after our divorce was finalized, I received a letter, an unsigned, handwritten plea for forgiveness and understanding. Even without a name attached, I recognized Dexter's distinctive scrawl immediately, that same elegant penmanship which had once professed eternal devotion and fidelity, until his pretty words curdled into lies and infidelity. I didn't bother opening the letter, merely tossed it into the crackling fireplace and watched the pages curl and blacken as the carefully inked epithets turned to ashes. No more words, rationalizations, or empty promises. Dexter had gambled everything for his tawdry indiscretions, and the house had folded around him. He was the architect of his own devastation and karmic reckoning. All that was left for me was to let the purifying flames run their course, scouring away the last vestiges of his poisonous influence over me. From those smoldering embers I would be born anew, emboldened, resilient, and finally free. The rest of my life was awaiting, full of infinite possibilities, uncompromised by Dexter's shadow, and I had no intentions of looking back.